Okay, so today we're looking at resilience, specifically within higher education.
Right.
But we're trying to move past that common idea of it just being about, an individual person's toughness.
Exactly. We want to explore how it works more broadly, especially thinking about students from marginalized backgrounds.
And we're drawing on some personal reflections, some case studies focusing on social class,
Hmm.
really trying to understand resilience as something tied to community and, well, the systems in place.
Yeah, that shift is, I think, the crucial part because traditionally higher ed research has really framed resilience as, well, it's all on the individual.
Like you either have it or you don't when things get tough.
Pretty much. Can the student bounce back? Do they have enough grit?
Okay, so that puts all the weight on the student, right? If they're finding it hard, it's seen as their lack of resilience.
Precisely. And the sources we're looking at point out this can be, well, problematic. It might not be the intention, but it ends up labeling students who are navigating really difficult, sometimes hostile environments as maybe not resilient enough. The sources phrase it as potentially pitting certain people who are resilient or have grit against those who do not.
Which feels like it totally misses the context, the actual situation they're in.
It can, yeah.
So if resilience isn't just about individual strength, what's the other way to think about it?
Well, another way is seeing resilience as a practice, something that's actually developed within communities and acted collectively.
Especially for groups facing marginalization.
Exactly. It becomes less about an internal trait and more about, how a group navigates things together, shared strategies, mutual support.
And this connects to ideas like community cultural wealth.
Spot on. Concepts like Yoso's community cultural wealth or Green's work on Black cultural wealth. They highlight the diverse assets, the knowledge, the skills that marginalized communities build up and use. That is resilience in a collective sense.
And the personal stories, the reflections we looked at, they really emphasize this community angle, don't they?
They really do. The individuals involved talk a lot about how important community and just feeling like you belong were for their own resilience.
Right.
One of them, Riss, actually says, when I feel like an imposter, I move closer toward community-based practices of resilience. So it's an active seeking out of that collective support.
That's powerful. The material also brings up something called dual ethnography. What's that about?
Yeah. So ethnography is basically a research method where two people, often with different identities or backgrounds, have a dialogue. They explore a topic like resilience through their shared and differing experiences.
So it's kind of a way to get multiple perspectives woven together.
Exactly. And in this case, it was used specifically to push back against those deficit narratives you sometimes hear about marginalized students just struggling.
Okay.
What's really interesting is that the authors suggest the process of doing ethnography can itself be seen as a form of resilience. It's a collaborative way to make sense of tough stuff.
A kind of resilience in action. The sources also use some specific theoretical lenses. Discrit, queer theory, critical trans politics. Can you give us a quick sense of how they help understand resilience here?
Sure. So these theories all offer ways to critique, dominant norms and power structures. Discrit, for example, makes us look at how society defines normal ability, and it challenges able-bodiedness as the default.
Okay, so for students with disabilities, resilience isn't just coping, it's navigating systems not built for them.
Right. Then queer theory, it challenges fixed ideas about identity. It looks at desire, destabilizing categories. Butler talks about working the weakness in the norm. It helps us think about adapting in ways that maybe don't fit standard expectations.
Which seems relevant when you're in a potentially hostile space.
Definitely. And critical trans politics really emphasizes solidarity, working across different marginalized groups to fight for access, for rights. It's about collective action for change.
So these aren't just abstract ideas. They connect directly to the challenges students face, like navigating campus climates that might feel hostile.
Absolutely. And that experience for many marginalized students means constantly having to perform resilience. Like you're always on, always navigating, always proving you can handle it.
There's that quote from Riss's song included in the reflections.
Yeah, it's really striking.
Resiliency is a cop-out phrase to me, a term used by the people that create these situations, that they never have to deal with, but I must learn to navigate them.
It just hits hard, doesn't it? That feeling that resilience is something demanded of you by the very systems or people making things difficult in the first place.
It really captures that sense of burden.
Yeah, and this feeling of erasure, too. Both Z and Riss talked about feeling like they had to hide parts of themselves just to get by on campus.
Which brings us to authenticity. How does being able to be authentic or not being able to connect to resilience?
Well, the sense is that finding ways to be authentic, to bring your whole self, is really crucial for, actual well-being and therefore resilience.
But it's maybe not straightforward.
Right. Because queer theory pushes back on the idea of one single, fixed, authentic self. It suggests authenticity might be more fluid, maybe context dependent.
So less about having one unchanging identity and more about finding ways to be true to yourself in different situations.
Exactly. Z puts it as queering or destabilizing notions of authenticity in order to forward your own resiliency as a practice.
Interesting. So it's about actively creating those moments or spaces, however small, where you can be authentic as a way to survive and stay well.
That seems to be the idea of finding those pockets of realness.
Now, let's bring in social class. The sources stress this is a huge factor, and it's more complicated than just rich or poor.
Absolutely. Social class identity is presented as subjective, fluid, and it really shapes, how students experience college, their sense of belonging, what resources they feel they can access.
And it doesn't operate in isolation, right? It intersects with race, gender, being first generation.
Precisely. These intersections create really unique sets of challenges. The case studies mentioned give us glimpses of this.
Yeah, like Dakota, who was native, first-gen, working class, dealing with classism from a roommate.
Or Jeremy, a working class student of color facing racism and a kind of reverse classism.
Then there was Thomas, black, first year, first gen, running into bias during a student staff selection.
And Rose Queer, undocumented, from Thailand, facing really serious financial and housing instability.
So you see how all these facets of identity come together to shape their experiences and, presumably, how they practice resilience.
Definitely. It underscores that resilience looks different depending on your specific position and the particular barriers you face.
And this also relates back to the idea that students bring different kinds of capital, different strengths, that aren't always valued by the institution.
Exactly. Frameworks like Yoso's Community Cultural Wealth or Mall's Funds of Knowledge, they're about recognizing those diverse assets. The knowledge, the skills, the networks that marginalized communities already possess and use for survival, for resistance. It's not about what they lack.
Okay, so bringing this all together, it seems like the real takeaway is that fostering resilience isn't just about teaching individual coping skills.
Not at all. There's a strong call for institutional accountability, for systemic change.
Right.
It's about making the environment more supportive. Riss says it clearly. Wanting to hold my university accountable for not creating spaces that nourish and support me as a whole person, instead of just seeing struggles as a personal failing.
So summing up then, resilience in higher ed is, well, much bigger than just one person's grit. It's woven into community, it's shaped by culture, by social factors, by the institution itself.
And for marginalized students, navigating environments that weren't built for them often means this constant performance of resilience, which can feel less like a strength and more like a burden imposed on them.
Understanding it really means looking at those intersections of identity, race, class, gender, sexuality, ability, documentation status, and questioning the norms that create these struggles in the first place.
Yeah. The ultimate aim should be, creating campuses where all students can actually thrive authentically, where they can draw on their own diverse strengths and on community support, not just be expected to tough it out against systemic barriers alone.
So, a final thought for you listening. How can we, institutions, communities, individuals, shift focus, move away from just expecting individual resilience, and instead actively work to build collective strength and well-being, particularly for marginalized students? What role can you play in making that shift happen?